We move on to our final session. This is always a busy one. We'll do our best, naturally, to get through as many questions as we possibly can, and a broad selection of subject areas and questions, of course, that both you in the room have put forward and the ones that are coming through from those listening online or watching online. We welcome back Tiff Lynch, National Chair of the Police Federation. John Partington is back with us, Acting National Secretary, and Mukund Krishna returns, CEO, of course, of the Police Federation. Good to see you all with us. I mean, let's just start off, if we could, Mukund, with a question that does relate to what you were talking about towards the end of your speech there, about essentially having a place around the table, a foot in the door, as it were, because that would be seen by, I think, many members reasonably as, pretty crucial. How far are you into that journey? Are you on the Christmas card list at the Home Office? Put it that way.
Well, after this, I might not be, actually. But listen, we have some really good relationships with the Home Office. I think it's important to recognize we have reset relationships with Home Office and other stakeholders. What we currently have, when I say we need to have a foot in the door, it comes in many forms. We currently have a consultative framework. Okay? And consultation is a bit patchy at times. And so our ability to influence isn't as great as we would like it to be. My message to the Home Office and the other stakeholders is very simple, which is we are the biggest policing body across England and Wales. Okay? The Federation represents almost 150,000 members. There isn't a bigger policing body. So if the Home Office want a view of the rank and file, it is the Federation that can provide that view. Because we have access to and we have connection with the 150,000.
Has that been Tiff, just to put that to you, has there been that sense it's been a bit kind of splintered, not really singing from one voice? Has that been a problem, do you think?
Yeah, it has been a problem because from a Federation perspective, the Federation of years gone by, we thought that we knew what the membership wanted, and we've shouted from the rooftops and we've put our fists on tables and kicked down doors and what have you. But what we actually haven't done is presented the feelings and the views of the membership to government. So it has been, the feedback from the Home Office has been, it's been very disjointed.
Yep.
So that is part of the transformation programme where we reform ourselves and we have that strategy and that one direction and that one voice. It's a stronger voice in that way.
Let's go straight to some questions. We've got a lot of questions that have come through online and some from the room as well. Here's one from DC Peregrine from Norfolk Police. Hope I got the pronunciation correct there. In light of the government's increased emphasis on tackling violence against women and girls through measures such as domestic violence protection notices, what assessment has been made of the impact of civilian staff redundancies on frontline officers' capacity to implement these orders effectively and the associated risks to offer well-being and public safety? Who would like to take that? John?
I think there's a wider problem here when we're looking at police officer numbers and the risks that they carry. Obviously, we're concerned at the moment that police officers are carrying too much risk. And the concern, as I outlined before, is that some chiefs haven't properly budgeted for this year. So if you look at, if a chief's budgeted under 2.8%, they could be looking to find up to 5% extra in their budget. So they're going to have to make savings somewhere, and those savings are going to come in the support that officers are given, the back office functions, and those officers who are remaining are going to have increased workloads. So we can look at the side issues around how you look after the officers who are investigating these very serious crimes. Yep. But obviously they're not going to be getting the support and they're potentially going to be taking on more crimes. But I don't think, to answer the question, I've not heard of any assessments being done to look forward to actually cater for the increased demand and risk.
Tiff, did you want to
I think it's very much going to be a work in progress, certainly with the CSR announcement and the priorities and the commitments that have come from government, and then running alongside the commitments and the obligations from forces. It's going to be very, very difficult to see what strategy they're going to be putting in place other than redundancies. They've already sold their silver, so the buildings have gone. The next highest expense our people.
Question for Mukund. Given the transformation programme, if you go forward 5 years to 2030, what police federation would you expect to see?
We want to be the go-to place for the government to seek views on policing. Okay. In a nutshell, that's what we want to be. We need to be the go-to organization for government to seek views on policing policy, because we represent over 85% of the policing workforce within England and Wales. And if we can't give that authoritative view on what needs to change in policing and what policing is and should be, there is no one else who can give that authoritative view. So in 5 years' time, it's all about being that one strong federation that represents the membership as a whole and being that true voice.
Okay.
Yeah.
John, what's your thought on that?
I said earlier on that we've taken a different approach on the way that we've gone around the submission to the pay review body this time, and that we're looking at problem solving within it, and we've identified that £2 billion. But we can't just go to the government on pay. If we want to be relevant to the government, we have to have positions on knife crime, we have to have positions on stop and search. Otherwise, we can't just go in there and say, just listen to our arguments on pay. We've got to be more, we've got to be a broader organisation to be more relevant moving forward.
Sure. Going to try and get through. So forgive me if I'm struggling to read some not that I'm criticising anybody's handwriting, but if you sent some of these to the CPS, they'd assume they've been redacted, I'm promising you. Nev says, how can we get officers talking to one another again to support each other after traumatic incidents without fear of being served notices or grassed up by colleagues? That's a good point, Tiff.
Yeah,
and a great question.
And I totally understand it. It is that fear factor that if you open up, it comes back to the masculinity part of it as well, where we've been pushing out that actually it's okay not to be okay, but at what point and how do you reach out and who do you speak to? Because you're told that you've got to go down occupational health. There's a fear factor there of what is the privacy within occupational health, and then what happens to me next. So the Federation have got a number of support networks for people to speak to. But what I would say, and coming back to the suicide rates as well, is that you are not alone and you have support and you have the backing of your local branches and the federations, because the moment that forces take you down a wrong route for not being okay is the point that the Federation will step in. Yeah. And we're there to support from start through to finish. It's deeply worrying. It really is, and it is that fear factor. I've got to keep quiet because otherwise potentially I'm going to lose my job. Yeah. And it's wholly wrong.
And you wouldn't think in this stage of the 21st century that's where we'd be, right?
With seeing the sights that our police officers, our members are seeing and the incidents that they're dealing with, then absolutely they're not going to be okay. Yeah. And it comes back to what is the employer's responsibility to support their officers to ensure that they are safe and that they are able to go out there and perform the duties. And it's a complex issue that needs to be sorted out, and we all need to work together. We have a collective responsibility to actually do that.
Here's a question from Ollie, who says, do we have any plans to seek to gain proper industrial right capabilities, seemingly like other public staff associations and unions, which would help greatly to resolve the lip service the Federation currently receives from the powers that be? Mukund, what is your response to that? Industrial rights, striking.
Yeah, I mean, we touched upon it earlier today. I kind of referenced it in my presentation. The message is very clear from the membership. The steer is very, very clear. We ran a poll last year. Over 95% steer was that we need to get in place industrial rights in this context, meaning binding and fair pay mechanism, arbitration. That is not lost on us. Absolutely, that is something that we are keen to deliver. The Copped Enough campaign is at the heart of it. How government responds to pay this year and moving forward will set the tone and will ramp up the pressure in that space, really. So it's very clear that trade unions have the right to strike, and that is not something that we are currently asking for, but it's very evident that trade unions have a right to strike and therefore have a better bargaining chip with the government. And we don't seem to have a better bargaining chip because we only have a consultative framework. And John, I think, should probably could even build on that. It certainly sits in the Secretary's office.
Yeah, I think to be clear to everyone, if you're under any illusion that we're not progressing this, and we obviously laid the early day motion in Parliament, and that's been signed by, I think, 31 MPs now, so that outlines our position very clearly in the public domain. We're also linking in with the Prison Officers Association, who obviously had their right to strike taken away. It's slightly a different set of circumstances, but we're trying to link in via the International Labour Organisation as well, because the Labour government do sign up to that. So we should have collective bargaining and binding arbitration under that International Labour Organisation agreement. So our position we set out quite firmly. It's just as you go through the year seems to take a long time, and we did say that we'd give this government a full cycle because it would take us that much time to get ourselves in our position. But once we had this pay award, then we would be pushing that agenda even more. But we've started the work already.
Yeah. Question from Ryan, who says, in Thames Valley Police, I lead on suicide prevention and awareness. With officer and staff suicides increasing over the last 5 years, we work with Thames Valley Federation to devise recording methods and welfare support to colleagues and families affected. What is the National Federation doing to ensure that all forces take this issue seriously and provide support for their officers and staff? Tiff.
Ryan, first of all, we need to hear more from you. I'd really like to get in touch with you afterwards, after this session, along with Aileen, your local branch chair. As Brian mentioned in the Copped Enough session, this is a really important issue that we're now facing. The loss of one officer or staff member within the police family is one too many. It's great that Thames Valley are recording their data, and ironically, I can't believe I'm actually saying it, but forces across the country, 43 forces, do not know, or I'll count out Thames Valley here because they clearly do not know how many officers are taking their own lives year in, year out, because it's not recorded anywhere. So along the...
How is that not recorded? I mean, I made the point earlier that if you had that amount of, other professions, GPs, for example,
yeah,
that would be front page news,
yeah,
that a GP took their own life because of the stresses of their job.
Yeah.
And so here it's not just not front page news, it's not even news among their own area.
It brings in a pincer movement that we're actually doing both nationally and also the work that Spencer Ragg, Chair of Hampshire, has launched with his STEP programme, which is the preventative measure for officers and the support for officers who are sadly in that dark place and are looking to take their own lives. And it's a fantastic piece of work that he's been doing. And it started off coinciding with a piece of work that came from Richie Murray, our health and safety lead, and Paul Williams, our national wellbeing lead. We had a sudden influx of police officers taking their own lives. And it was hitting the media, but nobody was asking the question why.
Yeah.
And with these numbers rising and rising and rising, we needed to find out how many and what were the reasons. So we went to each force to ask them, can you give us the numbers of how many officers you have lost through suicide? And the results came back. We don't have those numbers. We don't collate those numbers. It was all varying degrees.
Yeah.
And this is where you've got the lack of standardisation, 43 chiefs doing 43 different ways and getting 43 different results. Some forces are very good at recording, some forces aren't. So what we're actually wanting to do is have forces mandated to record suicide data, but also have a change in the legislation under the health and safety under RIDDOR so that they actually have to refer themselves through the health and safety on officers that are taking their own lives. Now, we're doing a lot of lobbying with MPs. We were in Parliament on Monday, and the suicide mandation and the RIDDOR changes in legislation, we talked to MPs about it, and we're on the first step. The MPs cross-party, exactly the same reaction that you gave. Could not believe it. Could not believe it. Because my view is if we're not looking at why, they're just a number.
Yeah.
And that is really, really sad. And again, wrong. So we will be lobbying MPs to get legislation changed so that forces are mandated to record and so that we can actually work towards improving the preventative measures for officers if they're going down that road.
Here's a question from Mukund. What is the most difficult thing you've had to deliver across this period of change?
How do I summarize that in? Well, I think the most difficult thing for us as an organization was to come to terms with the fact that we got it spectacularly wrong. And I think it's important to say that. Okay, I don't think any one of us in the organization knew we were almost surviving on a wing and a prayer, if I can put it that bluntly. And I think the most difficult thing was for us to accept it. Because people are genuinely trying to do the right thing, genuinely vested in what they're trying to do and supporting the membership. But I think the organization has failed in some ways in providing the support that the organization needs to give. So recognizing that and accepting that was the most important thing. And what I would say is recognizing and accepting where you've gone wrong is crossing half the bridge already. So for us, it's onwards and upwards from here. And I think, as I said before, the best of the Federation is yet to come. There is so much going on for us at the minute.
You feel confident as CEO that the Federation is in a better place and continually moving to an even better place?
Without a shadow of a doubt. And I'm going to call out a few things here, and I think it's important to say this out there. There's an awful lot of work that's gone into where is the subscriptions income going. It's all out there, and we've made a lot of effort to publish it openly and transparently. I've called out some numbers in terms of where the spend's gone today, what are we getting in terms of value for that, the 150 million in compensation and things like that. I think it's really important to say this. The National Board, the National Council, the chairs, the secretaries, all of Fed reps, I've got an amazing management team, several of them who are in this room today here, and some online. The staff who are here today, some online. We are all so emotionally vested in getting this right. Mm-hmm. Okay, we all have this feeling of we can't do the same mistakes again. So the emotional investment is driving this for us, and we are all standing together in making sure that our members out there who are at coalface have the best possible support that they can ever get.
Question from Chris, who says, I think it's to you, JP, mostly. The Shadow Home Secretary made mention of some of the changes to misconduct procedures to prevent officers being harassed by the misconduct proceedings for doing their job in the event of lawful use of lethal force or tactical pursuit, for example. What can we do so that professional standards departments don't take months to investigate relatively minor alleged infringements by officers? And we know this stuff can go on for, well, years in some cases.
I mean, the first thing that it comes down to is you've got to put the adequate resources into the departments that are investigating them. If you look in the Metropolitan Police at the moment, I may be wrong on this figure, there was around 600 officers investigating misconduct. So unless you resource it properly, it's never going to reduce. But then you've got to look at where you actually deal with this. And for me, there's a lot of management skills that are missing here. So when you get to the end, so we all know here that a lot of processes start off at the highest level. And by the time you finish the process, it's some kind of practice requires improvement. Now, you've got to trust and empower your managers here to intervene and let them make decisions. They may get them wrong at times, but if you deal with things at the lowest level, which the guidance actually tells you to start dealing with, I think then you start reducing it. You start actually trusting and empowering officers to go out and use their skills because they know they've got that support from their supervisors. But all the time we're seeing risk aversion, all the time, and people would rather just tick the box, gross misconduct hearing, rather than think, actually, I can make an intervention here. That's part of my role as a supervisor. So I think there's a lot, I've said it quite a few times this week, management skills, and I think there's some management skills missing. I think there needs to be more training around supervisors. But the senior officers need to trust and empower them and don't restrict them by local policies and processes.
A lot of comment about senior officers, that's a bit of a thread understandably,
Leadership.
through all of this. One here from Razwan who says, senior leaders set much of the culture and it's often toxic. How do we improve morale when those who have the power to make positive change are often the ones creating low morale and despondency, Tiff?
I think it's pretty much the same as what the Federation have done. They need to press the reset button, and they need to look at the culture. They need to, as they say, I won't say the word, but the ball always rolls downhill. And that ball now needs to be, or will be pushed back uphill.
Yeah.
For them to do some self-reflection and actually start coming together and looking at what it is for a service, what it is for the officers out there, and how do we support each other.
Sure.
They are there to lead, they are there to support and look after.
Interesting question in from Max as well in the audience. It says, how are you going to make chief constables speak out on funding issues? What will it take for a work to regs group action to take place, John?
So on the first one, the funding decision, that is actually factored into the communication plan at the moment because we are going to be calling out chief officers. You can't be putting in a submission that says 3.8%, but when you read into the details, it's 2.8% unless we get some further funding. That's just not fair on officers. That's not supporting them. Looking at some of the other submissions as well, I think there's more support that comes sometimes from other public sector leaders, and I think they need to step up. But part of that is they've got to go into government and fight, but we will be calling out them as part of this Cops Enough campaign.
Yeah.
So they've been identified as a group that we need to actually look at and challenge and get the responses from. There are a small group now who are speaking up. But when it comes to the second part of the question was the work to rule.
Work to regs, yeah.
Work to regs. That's something that we would love to do. It's been tried before in the Metropolitan Police. It's been tried in Police Scotland, and it's never truly worked. The problem is we put the pressure back on the officer because some will do it, but then we put you in direct conflict with your first line supervisor often, and then we're asking you not to try and work overtime or coming on your rest days, which in the current climate's not possible for a lot of officers. They need the extra money. So we're looking at some other things that we can do. There are other options that we've got available, like mass lobbies at Parliament, and we've got the poll as well after the pay award this year. Sure. So those are the ways that we're looking at it. But that one we'd love to do. We don't think we get the full buy-in, and without the full buy-in, we don't think it'd be useful.
On the wider point, Tiff, of chiefs, there's obviously some really good chiefs out there and some gifted people at the very top of the tree. Certainly when I talk to some police officers, which is quite a lot, I often get that view that these are people that, and I know this is a stereotype to take one whole group of chiefs, but they're happier in a room of politicians than they are with their fellow cops. Something happens when you get to the top of the ladder, where your allegiances are more with the Home Office than they are on the factory floor. Is that reasonable?
I'll start off by saying that chiefs do a very, very good job, and it's difficult to put all chiefs in a category like that. It's like saying because of a bad apple cop that goes and commits a horrible crime, we're all the same. What I will say is that up until recently, I don't think enough chiefs have come out and started shouting from the rooftops about everything that is happening on the front line for their officers. And I think had they have shouted long before, I said it in my opening speech, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, then maybe things might have been a bit different. And sadly, I think once you get into a particular position in that role, do you have to conform a little bit more? We've also got PCCs now in the mix. So we have those roles that are kind of part of policing's issues, maybe, supportive in others. So I think what we need from chief constables is their voice, because it's a strong voice. They're in that role for a reason, to keep the public safe, but also to look after their officers.
And that's the bit. I was talking to a friend of mine who's in the Met, and he was saying that, that the amount of times he's seen a perfectly reasonable copper find themselves in a more senior position.
Yeah.
And he said, the way he described it, he says, something happens. Clearly there's a fairy that comes down in the night with an injection of unreasonableness that just suddenly goes, there you go, there's your dose for the next 10 years, and everything changes. Like, what happened to Bert? He was a fabulous fella when we worked alongside him. He's turned into a nutter.
Yeah.
So that is a view that is out there.
I've never gone through the ranks.
You've never met Bert?
I am a constable, but something happens in their management training that I think they do lose. They lose the reality of what's happening on the front line and their experiences. Not all, but if they actually came out and started shouting and telling the true reality rather than saying, we will make it work, because years gone by, yes, we were able to say, we can make this work.
Yeah.
Those days have gone. So stand up, be proud to say, we cannot make this work. We cannot do the services of other services. We're here to do these roles as the policing service. And actually, face the drama. And we'll be right behind you, or shoulder to shoulder with you.
Sure. John?
Just on that point, I think in the current climate, the way policing is, to be a good senior leader now, you've got to want to be a problem solver and you've got to want to be vocal. If you've not got those two skills at the moment, I think you're going to be having an uphill task straight away because you won't be linking in with your officers because you'll just see too many issues that need dealing with. And if you don't want to be vocal, you're not going to be fighting for the pay that's needed within policing.
PCCs as well in that category?
Yep.
Is that's a difficult area, isn't it? Because motivation to become a PCC is very different to, perhaps motivation to rise through the ranks in policing. I mean, you can...
Can I just come in before we go to the PCC? But I think, having visited several forces and interacted with several members, a couple of things I would say. It's very clear to me when I meet members on shifts, the chiefs have actually not met many of them. They don't walk the floor. Okay? And that's very clear. What I can say is leadership in its general sense is a very lonely place. Okay? And there are births that happen everywhere. Something happens to people who become the national chair or the national secretary or the CEO once they become that. And I think we need to recognize that it is a lonely place. Difficult decisions have to be made, and leadership is all about making those difficult decisions. And so you are not going to be overall popular when you are a leader. But having said that, and I want to bring that back into the policing context here, which is, it just does not sound right to what Tiff has said. It does not sound right if the chief is deemed the employer for the officers. It doesn't sound right for me when the chiefs don't take responsibility for pay. And I want to bring it back to this conversation here and become more specific. It is really important because in my travels up and down the country, I'm making this very clear to the membership. Yes, the Federation has a responsibility and role to help influence pay and terms and conditions, but the chiefs are accountable for it. The chiefs are the one who employ them. So the chiefs have to step up and fight for it. And as John Partington just said, there is no point in saying pay is of most important to us and then say we've only budgeted for 2% or less than or nothing at all. Which one is it? If pay is important, then budget for it properly and fight the fight. And I just want to bring it back down to that, which is there seems to be this growing lack of confidence amongst rank and file. And I can say that because it's more than one force.
Sure. Tiff?
He's lit my touch paper now. I'm on it.
Come on, go for it.
And it comes back to the, yes, we can make it work. Now, as John said, JP said, when officers are relying on overtime, we've got major events that are happening. We've got disorders, the summer disorder. We can make this work. Now, you know what? In that Southport disorder that spiralled all the way through the country, officers were out there on the front line. Officers were in the offices doing the investigations and all of the other backfilling jobs as well. But that shouldn't be the norm. So for our chief constables that are reliant on cancelled rest days, cancelled annual leave days, moving people around left, right and blinking centre, that's not safe and it's not right. So start fighting for more officers, for better conditions, and you're going to have a happy workforce. And you know what? Everybody will be off your back. But I come back to PCCs hold a big responsibility on this, because they're there to obviously be the in-between between the communities and the Chief Constable.
Yeah.
We're the ones that are actually serving the communities and going out there and doing the jobs out there, but also getting the flack. It's our members that are knocking on the doors getting, oh, never see a copper. No. Chief Constables need to come out and tell people why. So I'm on my pedestal now. I'm getting a little bit frustrated.
I mean, it's clearly a
You've
big
done it.
theme. There's clearly a big theme around this.
It is.
This whole area, isn't it?
I'm frustrated with it.
Question in, no name given on this one. We've heard a lot from all of you today about the challenges we face and what you are doing, but what one message do you want us to take away from today's event? Let's start with asking Mukund, firstly.
One message. I would say we have your back. We take this very seriously. Genuinely, we are very emotionally vested in getting this right. This is not the federation that was 2 years ago. This will not be the federation 2 years down the line. It is going to be a wholly transformed organization, and I would urge and encourage people to keep the faith. We will get there, and we will have their back, I promise. We will.
Do you say keep the faith?
Keep the faith.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not the force. I just wondered.
Keep the faith.
Wanted to clarify.
Keep the faith, not the force.
Either.
Yeah.
Tiff, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, open the door to allow us to rebuild that trust, the re-engagement. Let us re-engage with you and get involved with us.
Yeah.
Keep talking to us. Keep telling us through your local branches, through the direct to the national. Myself, Brian, any of the team. Our phones are on. Our emails are open. We want to work with you and for you, and let's be one strong voice. And as Mukund said, the federation of 2 years ago is not going to be the federation of the future.
Yeah.
Promise you that.
JP, same question.
So the message to take away, if we have convinced you on the work that we're doing, the message would be to tell other people that the Federation do understand, they are listening to you, they are supporting you, and they understand that you've copped enough, and they're fighting for everything that they can to support you in the workplace to do the job up and down the country.
Here's a question from Matt, who says, my friend's daughter is joining the police later this year. I asked her if she's hoping for a long career and her long-time aspirations for the job. She openly admitted that she's opting for the degree entry route so that she can use the degree she gains to move to a desired career in probation. Does the Federation have any concerns that the degree entry route is seeing people join purely to get a job-funded degree, and we will see a revolving door of new recruits joining but then leaving? Tiff?
Yes. Well, there's your proof.
Yeah. But you echo all of that.
Yeah. There's your proof. And you know what? Can we blame them? They're coming into a service, they're walking out the door with a degree to go and work in another service. But that was the plan all along, that we would have that revolving door. What they didn't anticipate was the fact that it costs a lot of money to do that, and we're getting some really, really good, talented people through that door, but unfortunately we're not able to keep them.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real sad indictment. And I think we need to do more to keep them. Most definitely. They are our police officers of the future. But if they've already got that intention right from the start,
Yeah.
that's experience and, quite frankly, money that's walking out the door.
Of course it is.
But they've not understood the knock-on effect of this problem that it is, because it has a knock-on effect up the
Is
the
this
system.
common, what was just talked about in that question?
Yeah. But it's got a knock-on effect up the system, because obviously we feed him from the bottom and then promote upwards.
Of course.
So we're not getting that experience built up at the bottom level. So your operational knowledge, as you get up further up the command chain, is reducing.
Yeah.
So there's further problems with this that I don't think they ever even looked at.
Question from Sonia, who says, I believe that the Home Secretary announced in Parliament in a written statement that officers would receive an increase in London allowance of £1,250. Is there any update on this, JP?
It's being paid.
Sorted.
It's already being paid.
There you go. that addresses the question from Sonia.
If she's not being paid it, then she needs to get in touch with us.
Because she'll be owed it.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. And just final then, in summary, I know Mukund addressed this right at the very beginning, really, about where in 5 years' time things might be. But Tiff, just to put the same question to you, there does seem to be a sort of collective sense of optimism and, you know, very much a sort of collective thinking in the Federation that may have been lacking a bit over the years.
Absolutely. I think it's fair to say when you read the report, the looking back and the looking forward, we were splintered.
Yeah.
Totally disjointed. And internally, we didn't communicate.
Sure.
We were directed. That has totally changed. So the National Board, the National Council, we're on programmes to actually, we're aligned and we're one strong voice, we're one true voice. And that shows with the transparency of information that's being fed in, fed out. And I'm really optimistic for the future that we can actually start making the changes, influencing the changes that will improve the conditions for the membership.
And John, final word on that point. 5 years down the line.
Oh, 5 years, where the Federation will be?
Yeah, indeed. Not where you'll be.
I was looking at the clock here, so I was thinking...
Well, there you go. According to that, you've got 20 seconds.
No, minus. So what was the question, sorry?
So 5 years down the line, or thereabouts, so years ahead as we go on. I can write it for you if you like.
What would be the Federation?
Where do you see the Federation with all the changes and things that are going on? Are you positive?
I think we're in a much stronger position now at the moment. I think we're doing the work much better. I think we're a bit more streamlined for the Federation. I think the next year or two will be a key point to make sure that we carry on with those reforms that we're doing.
Yeah.
But I think we're in a positive position. Obviously, we've just had the elections, and I think we've got a new group of people, some new people come in, some fresh people who are very keen and want to push some ideas forward. We've got to become more operational around how we engage with the government as well, and not just around pay. But if we can do that, we become more relevant.
Good work.
Apologies for not paying attention there.
Not at all. So can you run that past me again?
He thought it bypassed that last question.
I did, actually.
Indeed. Listen, guys, thank you very much indeed. Please thank our panel, Mukund, Tiff and John. Thank you very much to all of them. We've hit the clock. Thank you to everybody who's been watching online throughout the course of the day. Thank you to everybody who came down here today as well. Big mention for Copt Enough, the campaign. Sign the virtual picket line, and remember, of course, you don't have to be a police officer to sign it, so tell every member of your family, friends, passers-by in the street, anybody that you bump into would be great. And a reminder, a slideshow with the QR code for people to scan and sign it is there. Friends and family, as I say, and not just police officers. Thank you very much for attending the second FedConnect. Enjoy the rest of the day, and thank you.